You're listening to Tea with Tolkien, a podcast for the Hobbit at heart. Hello, I hope you're having a lovely day today and that you had a great week last week. This is week 3 of our Silmarillion read-along. We are going to be talking about Quenta Silmarillion, Chapter 1. So if you are interested in joining our book club, I would say today is probably the last day that you'll be able to join us and catch up, because starting next week, the pace is going to pick up quite a bit. We're only doing 1 chapter this week, so really all you need to read is Ainulindale, Val Quenta, and this week's chapter in order to be caught up. After this, we're going to be doing 2 to 3 chapters a week up until we get towards the end of the Silmarillion, when the chapters are quite a bit longer. So this is your last call if you'd like to join us. You can sign up at teawithtolkien.com/book-club if you would like to join us. And we'd love to have you, because the discussion has been going great. I've been really happy with everyone. Everyone has been very lovely and kind to each other. So I'm just super happy with the environment that we've created in our Discord server. And I feel like the discussion has been very fruitful already for a lot of people. So I'm very proud of all of you who have never finished even the first chapter of the Silmarillion. You're already on this one. You're doing great. So I'm very happy. So this week we are starting the Quenta Silmarillion. The Quenta Silmarillion is the history of the Silmarils, and it is the bulk of the Silmarillion book. So you've got the Silmarillion itself, which is the book, the whole thing. And then inside the Silmarillion, you've got the Quenta Silmarillion, which I know it's a little bit confusing, but that's just the way Tolkien is, and we love him. So on to Chapter 1 of the Beginning of Days. It is told among the wise that the first war began before Arda was full-shaped, and ere yet there was anything that grew or walked upon earth, and for long Melkor had the upper hand. And while it says for long Melkor had the upper hand, like right after that, it's like, oh, but then Tolkien came down and Melkor was so scared of him that Melkor ran and hid. So I feel like that problem was dealt with pretty quickly. After Melkor has just like run away, everyone's like, oh, this is great, thanks Tolkien. Then Aule wrought the 2 lamps. We have Iluin to the north and Ormal to the south. Yes, the lamps have names. Yavanna's seeds that she had planted before then began to sprout, and then beasts came forth and dwelt among the earth. So the earth is really coming to life. And even though everything isn't like fully bloomed, this is just like the beginning, if that makes sense. So after the Valar had spent tons of time and energy shaping Middle Earth and getting it ready for the children, they made their first dwelling, and it was called the Isle of Almaran. They've worked very, very hard, and so now they're going to have a lovely, great feast. At this feast, Tolkien marries Nessa, and now it's time for Tolkien to take a big nap. While Tolkien is napping, Melkor, who already has spies in the midst of the Valar, is going to sneak into Middle-earth, and he's going to stay there, and they don't even really know about it. And now this is when Melkor is beginning to build his stronghold called Autumno. And while they weren't really aware that Melkor came over, they are kind of starting to figure this out, because there's rot growing, and what was once perfect and beautiful is now starting to get messed up. And really the only reason why is Melkor. Tolkien writes that the green things fell sick and rotted, and then rivers are choked with weeds and slime. The animals are going crazy and hurting each other and attacking, and suddenly there's just evil that's around them. Even though they weren't aware of Melkor coming, they begin to realize it now, and they start to try and figure out where he is. But Melkor has decided that he is now strong enough, and he is going to come over and knock their lamps over, because that is a very mature thing to do. And so Melkor comes and he knocks over the lamps. And then he gets away because there's a ton of confusion, there's darkness, and he escapes. The Valar aren't able to pursue him at that time because they are restraining all of the chaos that ensued from the lamps being knocked over. So he just gets away scot-free. Back to Autumno he goes. Thus ended the spring of Arda. After this, the Valar have really no choice but to leave Middle-earth, and they go to Aman. There they raise the Pelori, which are mountains, and they make them into kind of like a gate around their dwelling as a protection. And there they establish their home called Valinor. Valinor is the best place to be. Everything is clean and perfect, and nothing has been corrupted by Melkor. Tolkien writes that the very stones and waters were hallowed. So Valinor is just an absolutely lovely place. Best place I could ever think of. Yavanna then creates the 2 trees of Valinor. Telperion is the first tree, dark green and silver. And then there's Lorlin, the second tree, which is like a light green with gold. So it's nice that Tolkien made them different like that, so it's easy to remember which is which. With the trees began 2 things, the days of bliss in Valinor and the count of time. So before the trees and the light from the trees, there was just constant day from the lamps. But now the trees have waxing and waning lights, and this is the count of time now. So this is like the beginning of time. As time passed, the Valar remain in Valinor, and they're just having a lovely time, and everything's very blissful and clean, and nothing is messed up. But meanwhile, Melkor is still in Middle-earth, and he's having his way, he's messing stuff up, and he's kind of building his strength. Yavanna is worried because she knows that the children of Ilúvatar are going to be coming soon, and she's urging the other Valar to make war with him before they come, but nothing really happens quite yet. After this, Tolkien goes into a little exposition about the children of Ilúvatar. The children of Ilúvatar are elves and men. He calls the elves the firstborn, and then he calls the men the followers, because the elves are going to be awakened before the men. And then the elves are also called the Quendi, and the elves are also immortal. So keep that in mind. And then the men are also called the Atani, and they are mortal. After this, Tolkien writes a little bit more about mortality. He calls it a gift. He writes, "Death is their fate, the gift of Ilúvatar, which as time wears on, even the powers will envy." And this is kind of a theme that continues throughout the Silmarillion and even Lord of the Rings. You have the immortal elves who have grown very weary of this world because they are in it for the long haul, and their fate is tied to the world, much like the Valar. Whereas the men are only going to be living for a shorter time. So the choices that they make are really reflected in these 2 different fates that they have. And while death was meant to be a gift from Ilúvatar, Tolkien writes that Melkor has cast his shadow upon it and confounded it with darkness, and brought forth evil out of good, and fear out of hope. So even in this end of this chapter, we see the way that Melkor is already messing stuff up and kind of meddling in the ways of the men, even though they haven't even come to be yet. So this is just another example of Tolkien jumping way, way, way forward in the plot, just to kind of give you more exposition and help you understand what's about to come, because the elves are going to awaken next week. Okay, I hope that was helpful. Just a quick run through of that chapter. I love the discussion of mortality. I hope if you haven't read the chapter yet, you will go read it for yourself, because it's really interesting, and I know we're going to have a lot of fun discussing it in our Discord. So I will see you guys over there, and keep in mind that next week we will be reading and discussing chapters 2 and 3 of the Quenta Silmarillion. And I want to thank our newest patrons, Grace and Sarah H. Thank you so much for your generosity. I really appreciate you becoming patrons. And I also want to just thank all of our patrons, not just our new ones. You guys are the best, and you really make this possible. So I really appreciate it. If you would like to learn more about what we're doing here at Tea with Tolkien, you can go to teawithtolkien.com. That's all I got for you this week.